Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the show, Science, Facts, and Fallacies, episode 286. My name is Cameron English. That's Dr. Liza Dunn. Liza, what's going on?
Not much. We had a crazy busy day today.
We had a very busy day. We had, I want to say, the spiciest space I think we've ever had.
I think
it
so.
was fun. We got some good back and forth. We had some different perspectives, to say the least. So you should all listen to that and then join the next one Fridays, 11 a.m. Central Time. We talk about trust in science and anything else you could possibly think of, because people just bring up the strangest and most idiosyncratic topics.
What's really interesting about it is it is kind of like the forum. So the ancient Greek forum, or agora, where people would go and have debates, or if far further in the future, you had the French salons where people would go and have conversations. I kind of feel like spaces are a little bit like that, where you get. But the thing is that the people who come up are not necessarily vetted. They're just anybody and everybody. So you get a very, very interesting slice of perspectives.
Yeah, we've only ever banned one person who decided to post some family unfriendly videos.
To say the least, yeah.
So that person was removed. But otherwise, everyone's welcome. If you start to get aggressive, we will mute the whole space, and if you don't stop, we'll kick you off. But otherwise, it's great. It's good dialogue. It's very clear to me that there's a lot of people that join us that do not interact with each other.
Yes, that's true, which is great, actually, because it doesn't turn into an echo chamber. So we are open to debate. We're open to different ideas. We like to hear different ideas to, road test our ideas to make sure that they're right.
Yes, indeed. So join us next Friday. We'd love to see you. And until then, we're going to get into our typical format for this show, try to bring back a little normalcy. We're going to go through 3 stories. So here we go. First up. Do cage-free egg hens really roam free outdoors? Challenging 10 egg myths. Can't get your child to eat vegetables? Maybe it's genetic, says a new study. And finally, can household products induce early puberty? Study raises questions. Spoiler alert, the answer is no. I can't help myself. We'll get there in a second. First story, Liza. This is actually quite helpful, I think, to consumers who are trying to eat a nutritious diet. And this is, what's this website? Health Digest is a website. Not familiar with them, but this first article that we're talking about, it's very well sourced. It's pretty reasonable to understand. And they're just going through 10 different myths that everyone believes, or most people believe, about eggs. And we don't have to do all of them. There's a couple that stood out to me. The first one, which is the first one in the story, is that egg yolks are bad for your heart. I feel like this is sort of an urban myth that everybody believed for so long that it just won't go away. But based on this article, and it's been a little while since I've looked at the research, but the recent clinical evidence I've looked at seems to suggest that, having lots of cholesterol in your diet, provided it's an overall balanced diet, is not terrible for you. In fact, it might be quite good for you, depending on your circumstances. What did you think?
Yeah, I think that we've co-evolved with meat, milk, and eggs, right? Meat, milk, and eggs have been critical for forming our very, very big brains, which have conferred big survival benefit on human beings. And some people might think that that's not such a good thing, but I happen to think it is. And so the dietary, your liver is able to modulate the amount of cholesterol it makes based on your dietary intake, right? So the notion up until relatively recently is that dietary cholesterol in the form of meat, milk, and eggs may be detrimental to health because it increases the amount of lipid that gets distributed to tissues that, like your coronary arteries, that can cause heart attacks and strokes. I think that as we've looked at this over time, that dietary component may not have as big of an impact as we thought it had. And so we can be a little bit more relaxed about eating milk, meat, or drinking milk and eating meat and eggs because your liver can sense through a bunch of biochemical pathways can sense how much cholesterol is coming in through to your diet, and it can modulate it. So I think that's helpful. Now, I'm not saying that you shouldn't use statins if you have really high cholesterol or things like that. I think that the statins are pretty good drugs, but I think that we can be a little bit more relaxed about the dietary impacts that on cholesterol. I think that cholesterol is really critical for maintaining the fluidity of cell membranes. It's very critical for steroid hormone synthesis. And so I don't think that we need to be as kind of hysterical about the dietary component of cholesterol as we have been. And we've co-evolved to eat these proteins and eat fats. And so I think that everything in moderation, and there are some, phenotypes. There's some people with a genetic hypercholesterolemia that need to be very closely monitored. Maybe they shouldn't eat eggs, but for the general population, I think it's fine.
Myth number 2 that stuck out to me at least was the color of eggs has nothing to do with the nutrient quality of the egg itself.
It has to do with the earlobes of chickens, which I didn't know.
It's one of these things I've never investigated because I just couldn't bother to care. I always thought of that as like, well, maybe there's some truth to it, but the nutrient difference is probably insignificant. That's the way I thought of it. I've just never cared. I go to the grocery store, I buy eggs, I eat them every week. Nothing ever happens. I haven't died, haven't had a heart attack. Cholesterol's terrific. So anyways, it was interesting to learn from, I think it was someone from USDA or some sort of agricultural scientist saying, no, it has to do with, the chicken, right?
It has to do with the chicken, yes.
Yeah.
And certain chickens have white eggs, and certain breeds of chicken have white eggs. Certain breeds of chickens have brown eggs. And then certain kinds of chickens, I think from South America, have more blue eggs. And there's a photograph, and it's a beautiful photograph of the different egg colors. But they actually said that you can tell what color egg a chicken's going to have by looking at its earlobes. I don't know what the science behind that is, and I didn't know that chickens had earlobes. So I learned something new. It was fabulous.
That sounds like the title of one of those like corporate guru books.
Right? Totally does.
Yeah, the earlobes of chickens. How to master the corporate world in 20 minutes, or like some stupid. I don't know where that came from. That's how my mind works.
Self-help book. Self-help book. That's our new book. We'll actually, that would be really fun to write a book along those lines. Having little quirky things that can help your business.
The earlobes of chickens. 100 tips to conquering the corporate world. You heard it here. If you see it on LinkedIn, they stole it from us.
And we expect royalties.
Yes, we do. Pay up. Pay up. Being a big pharma shill is not as profitable as it used to be. It's a joke. It's a joke, everybody. Just jokes. Okay. A couple others. We've talked about this next one some on the show, but this idea that free-range chickens live these wholesome, loving, comfortable lives with all of this free-range space, and they're better as a result of that. I don't think they actually went far enough on this one, because as you've pointed out, you let chickens roam and they start fighting with each other.
They turn into dinosaurs. They turn into the dinosaurs that they are, and they go after each other.
Yes. So in other words, there's all these horrid images that are cooking up in your mind of these poor little chicks stuffed in wire cages because the farmers don't care and they just want to make money. In reality, you have to put them in cages so they don't eat each other.
So they don't peck each other to death. The term henpecked is not just about wives. It's about chickens. It's about chickens, and it comes from chickens pecking each other to death.
Yeah. We don't have to belabor the point, but as we've said before, farmers have and this is true of any agricultural enterprise, whether it's aquaculture, whether it's farmers raising animals, they have an incentive to take care of the animals because the animals that are healthy and comfortable produce more.
That's right.
So if your animals get sick, you don't make as much money, but then you could also get in trouble because if it's detected, that the animal is sick and you sent them to market or whatever, there could be consequences.
Absolutely.
So you want to do well by your animals. This is common sense. If you doubt me, just go find the nearest farmer or go online and ask them. They will tell you. I promise it's true. That's where I heard it from.
And they don't want RFK Jr. knocking on the doors and saying you caused a big huge outbreak of salmonella or E. coli.
Yes, of course. So there you go. There's nothing wrong with eating eggs from a cage-free chicken, whatever. But there's nothing great. It's the same. It's most food fads. It's the same thing. There's nothing wrong. Let's see what else was on here that was interesting. Eggs don't have to be refrigerated. Again, not super in depth, but this has more to do with regulation than anything, right? As I understand it, eggs that are sold in the U.S. in grocery stores have to be washed, and that gets rid of the cuticle that protects the egg from bacterial infection, which is not the case in Europe and some other countries. So the eggs can actually be stored at room temperature for longer without causing a problem.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm very, very, very conservative in that department. I would rather have a cold egg like stored in the refrigerator because I've seen salmonella infections and I just don't think it's worth it.
Yes, I think that's true. And the reason it happens, by the way, is the eggs have to be washed. I don't know if I said that or not.
Yes, you did. And washing the egg takes off the protective cuticle. The protective cuticle means that you can keep it at room temperature for a longer time. But I'm just one of these people that kind of likes to have not bacterial contamination of either the eggshell, which you can get even if you have a cuticle. Think about the exit from a bird, and those birds in tight spaces carry diseases, and those diseases are often fecally transmitted. And so, unless I were a farmer and eating the egg on the farm right away, I probably would lean towards a more kind of sanitary approach to eggs, and keeping them cold is one of them.
There you go, everyone. They do it in Europe. Doesn't make it good. Doesn't make it better. Just in case someone says, well, they banned it in Europe. Well, I'm like, they do other weird things in Europe. So there you go.
Yeah, right.
But interesting. Go check out this article. There's some other good ones. The egg float test, not as reliable as you thought. Eggs are not necessarily a good source of iron. Eggs don't cause acne. There's a few other good things in here. Go check out this article. 10 egg health myths we thought were true but aren't.
It's a fun read.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on to the next story. This one, personally relevant to me, Liza, maybe to you as well. I hate the taste of green vegetables. I just find them utterly and thoroughly disgusting. Sometimes I will eat them for my kids' sake, just to set a good example, but I just do not like broccoli, anything.
I've got a story for you. I don't know if I've ever told you this story before.
Okay, let me introduce this really quick, and then we'll get into it. So this is from the BBC. It's called "Twin Study of Fussy Eaters Reveals New Clues." The gist of this is they looked at a study was done in the UK, obviously BBC. They're looking at identical and non-identical twins from 16 months old to 13 years old, and the idea is if there's some kind of genetic component to your preference or lack thereof for vegetables, then it'll probably more common in the identical twins because they're genetically identical, whereas your typical sibling, 50% or so genetically comparable. And what they found pretty consistently is that the identical twins had similar preferences. So this would seem to suggest, and again, it's only one study, and as we've stressed a lot of times, these kind of genetic studies are correlational. Because you can't really say, oh, this gene does this, and therefore you don't like Brussels sprouts. But nonetheless, it's still interesting, and at least points to an explanation that seems to make some sense. But you had a story, so please go ahead.
Yeah, so I hate peas. I really hate them. I hate the texture. I hate the flavor. I hate them. And so when I was little, and if I had been a part of this cohort, if I had had a twin, part of this cohort, I wonder if they would have called it food fussiness versus food neuroticism. I think that's what the other arm was. I was under the impression that if my mom thought my dad hated peas, we wouldn't have to have them anymore. And my mom was on a big peas kick too. We were having peas all the time. Anyway, long and short is my dad would be far too polite to tell my mom at the dinner table that he didn't like peas. And so I thought, how do I convince my mother that he hates peas so she'll stop making them? What I did was I thought, if she thinks he's throwing them on the floor, then she will get the message. And so I wound up taking the peas off of my plate surreptitiously and dumping them into my napkin and flinging them at his feet every time we'd have peas. And my mom couldn't figure out why there were peas all over the floor. And I couldn't figure out why she kept on serving peas, because he was clearly telling her that he didn't like peas. So I think that might be a little bit more in the neurotic category. And I got to tell you, I don't think it's genetic, because he loves peas. And most of the people in my family love peas. So I don't know that there's a gene hating that makes you predisposed to hating peas, but I hated them. I still do. In terms of this study, I think it's kind of interesting. Once again, correlation is not causation. I think that these twins are brought up in the same environment. I find it very hard to make a claim that there is a genetic component to a study where the parents are doing reporting on subjective measures of whether or not somebody is food fussy or neurotic about different foods. I think that identical twins are very interesting in terms of cohorts, because they are, I don't know, I think that they might have sixth senses about each other, and that might be genetic, but that's faith-based too. So I don't know. I thought the study was interesting, but I'm not sure that I believe anything that they had to say.
It's a very good point. I have a clear conflict of interest here because I hate the taste of green things. So I want a sciencey explanation, right? If I can say, baby, I was born this way, then, who are you to, how dare you question my truth, right? I don't like Brussels sprouts. They make me go, ugh. And that's all you need to know. It's the science. Follow the science, Liza.
That's exactly right.
But no, in all seriousness, especially me, I bash epidemiological studies that are based on dietary recall and self-report, because people lie and they forget. It's just human nature. It's what we do. In this case, maybe some parents would because they're concerned. They're like, I want my kid to eat vegetables, and they're not. So here's what I know. That's possible. There's no certainty. It's kind of just a quirky story. It seems plausible because over time, genetic study or twin studies like this have been helpful in revealing certain realities about biology and so forth.
But it's kind of interesting who was participating in the studies too.
Yeah,
right?
And who was that?
And it was well-to-do Caucasian families that were interested in food. And so you wonder if there's not a little element in there that's potentially biasing. They're not food insecure. They're they've got a whole variety of things to choose from, and you wonder how does that bias the study? Is my child really neurotic, or am I overthinking the situation?
Yeah, they came up with a disorder, which apparently is not a real disorder, but you're using it. It's called avoidant and restrictive food intake disorder. I'm not familiar with that. Maybe it is legitimate. It seems, I don't know, it seems a little overwrought. It's, like your kid won't eat certain foods. I don't know if that's a disorder necessarily. Whatever. Right. I don't know. It's all I'm saying is there's lots of things here that are very uncertain. And, but I can see why the BBC picked this up because, my reaction was, oh, hey, interesting. Yep. I don't have to, I don't have to like green beans, wife, because genetics. So there you go.
And because I'm not hungry.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
I think there would be a huge uptick in the green bean consumption if everybody were really hungry. There would be all of a sudden, I might even eat peas.
There was many years ago, I was at work and we had pizza one day and I was picking the green onions off the pizza because, as I said, they're disgusting. And this guy was like, why are you picking the vegetables off? I said, I'm watching my calories. So there you go. BBC story, twin study of fussy eaters reveals new clues. Go take a look at that. Journal of Child Psychology and Psychiatry is where the paper was published, if you can't sleep and you want to read that sometime. Final story of the day, Liza. As I said, spoiler alert, this is stupid. This is originally from The Hill. Girls may be starting puberty earlier due to chemical exposure study. The paper was published last Tuesday for us. Whenever you listen to this, I don't know when last Tuesday was, but this is late September 2024. Published in the journal called Endocrinology. It was by researchers from the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences, which is, depending on who you ask, a reputable agency. There's mixed work that comes out of that, is all I'll say for now. But in essence, what they did is and again, I've just surveyed this paper. I haven't read it in depth. So take this with a grain of salt, read it yourselves. They screened a database of chemicals that are used in consumer products, and then they found some that have some association with damage to the part of the brain that controls hormone production and metabolism. And then based on that, they did some studies in vitro with different cell lines. So they did embryonic cells from zebrafish, which nobody listening to this is a zebrafish. They used an immortalized cell line that was derived from an aborted fetus in the 70s. These are called HEK293 cells. They're embryonic kidney cells. And they're immortalized, meaning that you have to genetically engineer them to screw with their cell cycle so they keep dividing. So they're dysfunctional cells. They're not healthy
to start
cells.
Out with, yes.
Right. That's very important. If you look that up, for one thing, they're outside of the organ that they're a part of. They're not part of your whole body. And then they're dysfunctional, right? You have to screw with them and make them sick effectively so they keep dividing so you can throw chemicals at them and see what happens. That's great when you're like looking at a new cancer drug, a new potential therapy, or you're looking at CRISPR gene editing or something. Like you're trying to figure out a way to treat a problem. That's great. But what all they're doing here is they're throwing chemicals at it, and they're like, maybe this will make it sicker. Maybe this will make it sicker. Yep, that made it sicker. Okay, put it in the paper. And then they also use cells from rodents. So I didn't want to go in all the paper. It's super technical, but there's a thing here in the conclusion where they specifically say, and I don't know if I can find the quote in this moment, but they specifically say we did not provide any evidence that this actually occurs in humans. That's very clear in the conclusion. And then they also say if we are going to provide that kind of evidence, we need to do better cell studies, and then we also need epidemiological studies that follow people over time to actually show that this occurs in actual human girls. So the Hill headline a little right,
kind of misleading maybe.
Yeah, girls may be starting puberty earlier. There's not one shred of data in this paper that supports that. And putting the word may in there is not very helpful.
No,
it doesn't even show that. Even show that, right? They don't even know how this would happen. I'll stop. What are your thoughts?
I think that it's, and RFK Jr. is capitalizing on this kind of stuff. He's making big, huge, sweeping claims that because of toxins in the water and toxins in your house, and we've got to be afraid of everything, that puberty is starting earlier. And so we need to ban everything that's made our existence in the 20th century and 21st century possible. If you look at the onset of puberty in different cohorts, it still kind of spans the ages between 10 and a half and 14 for girls, and 11 and a half, 12, and 15 for boys. And it's pretty consistent. Sometimes you get earlier onset puberty if you have better food intake, right? You're able to concentrate if you have a better diet, you're able to actually mature faster and make your brain grow faster and things like that, because you've got enough nutrients that make that possible. The claim that chemicals are making puberty happen faster is really, really interesting. In the when we're talking about trace exposures to chemicals that are really insignificant when it comes to dyes in your food supply, or preservatives, or pesticides, or the use of regular household chemicals that have nothing to do. Most of them won't even cross the blood-brain barrier and set that off. And on the one hand, people make that claim. On the other hand, they say that it's perfectly okay for little kids to be on puberty blockers and on cross-sex hormones, and that's because they identify a certain way, and that won't have any health effects, but the household chemicals are the problem. Anyway, long and short is, I don't think we're seeing a massive increase you can look at our world in data and look at the actual data there. I don't think we're seeing a massive increase in the early onset of puberty, and I don't think we're seeing a massive negative outcome from people having their periods at 10 as opposed to 11. It really doesn't make a physiologic difference.
Yeah, I would love to ask any of the authors of this paper if boys can menstruate.
Yeah, right.
Just see what they say.
That's exactly right.
Because I think that's a helpful
barometer of
heuristic, right? Like, can I trust what you say about this topic, or are you just going to lie to me and pretend?
I mean, I think, wasn't it this article? Didn't this article talk about pregnant people?
Maybe I didn't look.
I think there was. I think it was this one. I was either this one or the egg one, talking about pregnant people. And sorry, people don't get pregnant. Women get pregnant. That is a scientific fact. Period. End of report. No pun intended with the period part.
What are you, a doctor or something?
Yeah, right. I'm a rebel. Who knew that I would be a rebel?
Here's the quote I was talking about from this paper. So they say, although our in vitro and in vivo data do not offer direct evidence supporting an effect on puberty, they represent a first step toward linking the chemical in question to the activity of the neuroreproductive axis during development. This possibly deserves further study. Okay, that's funny. That quote was not in the Hill story. This possibly deserves further study.
Possibly. What do you want to spend your dollars on? What do you want to spend your taxpayer dollars on? Do you want to spend your taxpayer dollars on curing childhood cancer and that kind of stuff? Or do you want to just do this kind of exploratory stuff on, oh my gosh, somebody got their period when they were 9.5 and another one did when they were 10. The world's coming to an end. The sky is not falling. This doesn't affect their reproductive capabilities. Why are we spending so much time worrying about this?
Well, because there's grants to be awarded and papers to be published. The system must go on. The wheels must keep turning. By the way, you all did pay for this. This was funded by a federal research grant from the National Institutes of Environmental Health Sciences. So congratulations. It's wonderful. One thing about product safety that we should hit, if there was any hint, and I mean any hint, that any of these products, any of these consumer products or cosmetics or whatever that they're talking about in the study, if there was even an inkling that this was really happening, the FDA would swoop in and pull every batch of this stuff off the shelf within a week. And you would not hear the end of it. There would be lawsuits if anybody was injured. The company would issue an apology about how they're going to do better, blah, 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 blah. So all that to say, and again, not that I want anyone to get sick. We don't want it to go that far.
That's exactly right.
But that incentive makes clear that in most cases, companies are going to make sure they're not putting anything harmful in their products. The FDA is going to do their due diligence because they don't want to be accused of being asleep at the wheel. And so studies like this, I think, are truly a waste of time. Because if this was happening, we would have found out.
Yes, we would have absolutely found out, and I think that we'd have an epidemic of diseases that we don't have, right? So I think you would see a lot of problems in boys and girls that we don't see.
Unless we induce them.
Unless we induce them. Unless we decide. Yeah,
enough. We're still on our space moon. We're still coming down.
Yeah,
coming down. Okay, let's leave it there. Again, if you want to read the study, I don't know why you would. It's in the journal Endocrinology, the latest edition. It's probably on the table at your dentist's office, no doubt. The article in the Hill is called Girls May Be Starting Puberty Earlier Due to Chemical Exposure Study. It's not happening. I call BS. Red flag on the Hill. 5-yard penalty. Okay. Thank you all for joining us. Come to the Spaces, 11 a.m. Central every Friday. We'll be back next week with a new batch of stories. At Dr. Liza MD on Twitter. I'm at Cam J English. Thank you so much. See you next time.
Have a good week.